When my parents looked me dead in the eye and said, "If you don't sell your house to fund your sister's dream home, you're not our daughter anymore," my stomach dropped. I can still hear my mother's voice, cold, sharp, and final, like she was cutting me out of her life with a single sentence. That was the exact moment I realized I was never really their daughter, not in the way Chloe, my younger sister, has always been. I was just there. The convenient older child who got ignored, who got pushed aside, who was expected to sacrifice so she could shine. But this time, it wasn't just about a birthday gift or a college tuition check that never came, or another holiday where Chloe got the expensive necklace while I unwrapped socks. This time, they wanted the only thing I had, the house my grandmother left me, my grandmother's home, my safe place, my inheritance. And I'll tell you this, when they showed up at that house with a realtor, full of smug smiles and grand plans, what happened next was something they never ever saw coming. Their reaction was priceless. But let me back up for a second and introduce myself. Because if you're going to understand this story, you need to know who I am and who the people in my life are. My name is Lydia Hartman. I'm 28 years old, and if there's one word I'd use to describe myself, it's resilient. I had to be. Growing up in the Hartman household meant learning early that love had conditions, and those conditions usually favored Chloe. My mother, Margaret Hartman, is 54. She's the kind of woman who cares more about what the neighbors think than what her children actually feel. To her, life is about appearances, looking perfect, sounding perfect, being admired. And Chloe? Chloe has always been the golden child who makes her look good. My father, Daniel Hartman, is 56. He's quieter than my mother, but don't mistake his silence for kindness. He always backs her up. If she says the sky is green, then to him, the sky is green. And if she says Lydia doesn't deserve what Chloe deserves, then guess who gets left out? Then there's Chloe, my younger sister, 25 years old and the absolute center of their universe. She's spoiled, entitled, and knows it. She doesn't just expect the world to bend for her, she demands it. And my parents? They bend, they break. They give her everything, even if it means taking from me. Now here's the thing. I wasn't always bitter. As a kid, I tried. I tried to win their approval, to earn their love, to be the daughter they wanted. I'd come home with good grades and hear, "That's nice, Lydia, but look at Chloe's drawing. She's so talented." I'd work a part-time job to pay for my own clothes while Chloe got a brand new wardrobe every season. But through it all, I had one person who truly saw me. My grandmother, Eleanor. She was my safe harbor, the one who told me I mattered. She lived in a small farmhouse just outside of town. Nothing fancy, but warm, full of history, and filled with love. She used to tell me, "Lydia, this house will always be your home. One day, it'll be yours, and I know you'll take care of it." When she passed, she left it to me. And for the first time in my life, I had something that was mine. Not borrowed, not conditional, not given to Chloe because she deserved it more. It was mine. So when my parents came to me, demanding I sell that house to fund Chloe's dream mansion, it wasn't just a request, it was a threat. It was a betrayal. And it was proof that they never saw me as equal to her, not even close. And yet, instead of breaking me, it sparked something inside me. Because for the first time, I wasn't a little girl desperate for approval. I was a woman who finally had the power to say no. What my parents didn't realize that day was that this house was more than wood and bricks. It was my identity. It was the last piece of my grandmother I had left. And there was no way I was letting them rip it away from me, not for Chloe, not for anyone. Here's what you need to know as this story unfolds. I am Lydia, the daughter they overlooked. Margaret is my mother, obsessed with appearances. Daniel is my father, silent but complicit. Chloe is my sister, the golden child used to getting everything. And when the four of them decided to corner me, to bully me, to threaten me into giving up my inheritance, they had no idea who they were really dealing with, because I wasn't about to give in. I was about to fight back in a way they'd never forget. And when they showed up with that realtor, expecting to take over, their reaction? Oh, you'll want to hear this. When I first unlocked the front door of my grandmother's farmhouse after the funeral, I felt a strange mix of grief and comfort. The air inside smelled faintly of lavender and cedar, the same way it always had when I was a child visiting on weekends. The old wooden floors creaked under my feet, and for a moment I could almost hear her humming in the kitchen. This house wasn't just walls and a roof. It was the one place where I'd felt safe. Growing up, my parents' home always felt like a competition, a place where Chloe's smile won trophies and Lydia's silence went unnoticed. But here, in my grandmother Eleanor's farmhouse, I wasn't the forgotten daughter. I was simply loved. When Grandma passed away, she left the house to me. The will was clear, simple, and intentional. The property, the furniture, everything inside belonged to me. No strings attached. To anyone else, it might have just been an old farmhouse on the edge of town. But to me, it was freedom. It was validation. It was proof that someone had seen me, chosen me, and believed I was worthy of having something all my own. I remember sitting on the front porch that first evening, watching the sun dip below the cornfields. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel like I was just surviving. I felt like I was finally building something of my own. My grandmother and I had been close in a way I never was with my parents. She'd call me every Sunday, ask about my week, actually listen to my answers. When I cried about my parents ignoring me or Chloe getting all the attention, she'd gently squeeze my hand and say, "Lydia, you are stronger than they realize. One day, they'll see. But even if they don't, I see you. I always will." That farmhouse was filled with memories like that. Baked apple pies cooling by the window, me helping her plant flowers in the front yard, late-night talks where she reminded me that my worth wasn't measured by my mother's approval. So when I inherited the house, it wasn't just property. It was her final gift, a place to anchor myself, to breathe, to grow. And I promised myself I would honor her by making it a home. Meanwhile, life with my parents hadn't changed much. Margaret, my mother, was still laser-focused on appearances. She was the type of woman who ironed the curtains before guests came over and treated the family like props in her performance of perfect suburban life. To her, Chloe was the star. Chloe was the one who made her look good. The daughter with a wide smile, trendy clothes, and grand dreams of marrying rich and living in luxury. And Daniel, my father, well, he played his role too. Always silent in the background, never questioning Margaret's words, never standing up for me. If Margaret said Chloe deserved a new car at 20, Daniel signed the check. If Margaret said Lydia could handle her own tuition, Daniel shrugged and said, "She'll figure it out." That's how it always was. Chloe got the spotlight, the support, the resources. I got the scraps, if that. But with Grandma's farmhouse, for once, I had something they couldn't twist in Chloe's favor. Or so I thought. At first, I tried not to flaunt it. I didn't tell them much about the house beyond the basics. It felt too personal, too sacred to share. I was quietly making plans, small renovations, repainting the living room, maybe even starting a garden in the backyard. I pictured holidays there, not with my parents, but with friends, or maybe a family of my own someday. But then Chloe started talking. She mentioned at dinner one night that she and her boyfriend had been looking at land to build their dream home. She gushed about wide-open kitchens, a 3-car garage, a pool in the backyard. My parents lit up with excitement, practically leaning over the table to hear every detail. And then my mother's eyes flicked toward me. I didn't think much of it at the time, but looking back, I should have recognized that look, that calculating gleam that said she was already planning how to redirect my future into Chloe's. I remember lying awake in the farmhouse one night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything. For once, I wasn't the girl begging for my parents' scraps. I had my own home, my own stability. But deep down, I knew them. I knew Margaret especially. She didn't see this house as mine. She saw it as wasted potential. To her, I didn't deserve it the way Chloe did. And though I didn't know it yet, she was about to prove me right in a way that would shake everything. At that time, though, I was simply Lydia, the forgotten daughter who had finally found her place. I was happy, hopeful, and maybe even a little naive. I believed I could hold on to the gift my grandmother left me without a fight. I had no idea just how far my parents were willing to go to strip it away. The confrontation didn't come as a quiet suggestion. It came like a storm. It was a Saturday morning when my parents showed up at the farmhouse without warning. I was in the middle of sanding an old dresser that had belonged to Grandma, trying to restore it, when I heard tires crunching on the gravel driveway. I looked out the window and saw my mother's sleek black SUV pulling in. The sight of it immediately made my chest tighten. They didn't even knock politely. My mother pushed the front door open as if she still owned the place. My father followed right behind her, carrying a manila folder, and Chloe trailed in with her perfect blowout hair and a smug grin. "Lydia!" My mother's voice was syrupy sweet at first, the kind of tone she used when she was about to ask for something outrageous. "This house looks cozy, but don't you think it's a little much for just you?" I set my sandpaper down, already bracing myself. "What are you doing here, Mom?" She ignored the question and gestured toward Chloe, who looked like she was about to burst with excitement. "Your sister has found the perfect plot of land. Absolutely stunning. And we've been talking. It makes so much sense for you to sell this old place. You don't need all this space. Chloe can finally build her dream home," Chloe chimed in, her voice bubbling with entitlement. "It's only fair, Lyd. You're single. You don't even have kids. Why hold on to this when I could actually use it?" I stared at her in disbelief. "Fair? Chloe, this was Grandma's house. She left it to me." That was when my father slid the manila folder onto the kitchen table. Inside were papers, real estate documents, listings, estimates. He cleared his throat. "We've already spoken to a realtor. The market is hot right now. If you list this place, you could make enough for Chloe's down payment and then some. Everyone wins. Everyone except me," I thought. I felt heat rising in my chest. "This isn't your decision. Grandma gave this house to me. It's mine." The sweetness dropped from my mother's tone in an instant. Her eyes narrowed, sharp as glass. "Lydia, don't be selfish. Your sister deserves this chance. You can rent a nice apartment in town. This house is wasted on you, wasted on me." My voice cracked, not from weakness, but from the sheer audacity of what I was hearing. "This is the only thing I've ever been given that was just mine. And you want me to hand it over for Chloe's dream mansion?" My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. "If you can't put your family first, then maybe you're not part of this family at all." The words hit like a slap. I actually staggered back a step. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Chloe smirk, as if she'd already won. My father didn't even look at me. He just stood there silently, his silence louder than my mother's cruelty. I felt my grandmother's presence in that moment, her words echoing in my head. "You are stronger than they realize." "I'm not selling this house," I said, my voice steady now. "Not for Chloe. Not for anyone." My mother's face hardened. "If you refuse, Lydia, don't come crying to us later. You'll have no support, no family. Nothing." Chloe rolled her eyes dramatically. "God, you're so dramatic, Lyd. Just sign the papers. It's not like you even know what to do with this place." I picked up the folder from the table and shoved it back toward my father. "Take your papers and get out." For a long moment, no one moved. My parents stared at me like they didn't recognize me. Chloe huffed, muttering under her breath about how unfair I was. Finally, my mother grabbed her purse with a sharp motion and stormed toward the door. "You'll regret this," she snapped over her shoulder. As the door slammed shut behind them, my hands were shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Part of me wanted to collapse, to cry, to feel small again. But another part of me, stronger, fiercer, knew this was just the beginning. They thought they could bully me into giving up the last piece of my grandmother I had. They thought they could threaten me into submission, like they always had. But this time, I wasn't bending. This time, I was ready to fight back. Would you like me to now expand Section 4, the turning point, into approximately 700 words, showing how Lydia secretly plots with Uncle Mark and sets up the twist? You said, yes, expand Section 4, and do it in 700 words. ChatGPT said, perfect. Here's the fully expanded Section 4, the turning point, decision action, in about 700 words. This section focuses on Lydia's quiet defiance, her search for options, and the secret alliance with her Uncle Mark that sets up the dramatic climax. Section 4, The Turning Point, expanded approximately 700 words. In 10 dials. After that confrontation, the farmhouse felt different. It was still warm, still mine, but there was a shadow over it now, a tension that followed me from room to room. I couldn't drink coffee at the kitchen table without picturing my father sliding those real estate documents across it. I couldn't look at the front porch without hearing Chloe's voice calling me selfish. For days, I replayed my mother's words in my head. If you can't put your family first, then maybe you're not part of this family at all. It stung, of course it did. But with each replay, the sting burned less and hardened into something else, determination. I wasn't going to lose this house. Still, I knew my parents. They weren't the type to back down after one failed attempt. If anything, Margaret thrived on control. She'd find new ways to pressure me, new threats to make, new ways to twist the knife. And Chloe? Chloe would egg her on because she didn't see this as cruel. She saw it as her birthright. That was when I realized I couldn't just say no. I had to protect the house. I had to make sure they couldn't touch it, no matter what. I started by researching my options. I spent hours at the kitchen table with my laptop, reading about inheritance rights, property laws, anything that might give me leverage. Legally, the house was mine. Grandma's will was airtight. But I knew my mother well enough to know she could make my life miserable in other ways, cutting me off, slandering me to relatives, maybe even dragging me into court just to bleed me dry with legal fees. That was when an idea began to form, one that scared me at first because it felt so drastic. What if I sold the house? Not to strangers, but to someone I could trust. Someone who wouldn't hand it back to Chloe on a silver platter. But who could that be? That's when I thought of Uncle Mark, my father's younger brother. He was the black sheep of the family, though not for any good reason. Years ago, he'd stood up to my parents when they tried to manipulate him into co-signing a loan for Chloe's college expenses. He refused, saying it wasn't his responsibility. My parents cut him off after that, calling him selfish and unreliable. But I remembered Uncle Mark differently. He used to sneak me ice cream when I was little, ruffle my hair and whisper, "Hang in there, kid. You're tougher than they think." After my parents shut him out, I barely saw him, but the memory lingered. So I called him. When his voice came through the line, deep and a little rough around the edges, I hesitated. "Uncle Mark? It's Lydia." There was a pause, then warmth. "Lydia. Wow. Haven't heard from you in a long time. How are you, kiddo?" That was all it took for the words to come spilling out. I told him everything. The house, my parents' demand, the threat, the way they'd tried to bulldoze me into giving it up. He listened quietly, and when I finished, he let out a long, low whistle. "Sounds exactly like your mother," he muttered, always thinking she can control everyone around her. Then his tone softened. "What do you want to do, Lydia?" "I want to keep the house," I said firmly. "But I also want to make sure they can't take it from me or manipulate me into selling. I thought maybe I could sell it to you. That way, they'd never suspect. And if you let me stay here, it would still feel like mine." There was silence on the line for a moment, and then he chuckled. "You know, that's bold. I like it. You'd be killing two birds with one stone, cutting off their power play and bringing me back into the picture. You sure about this?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. For the first time since the confrontation, I felt lighter, stronger. "I'm sure." We worked out the details quietly, carefully. Mark had enough savings to buy the house outright, and he was more than happy to let me live there as a tenant, paying a modest rent that kept things official on paper, but still affordable for me. It felt like a secret rebellion, like I was finally outsmarting my parents at their own game. Every step of the process, the paperwork, the signatures, the quiet transfer of ownership, was a small victory. And with each one, I felt the weight of their control slipping further away. I didn't tell anyone. Not friends, not coworkers, not even distant relatives. This was between me and Mark, and I wanted it to be a complete shock when the time came. Because I knew my parents weren't finished. They'd be back. They always came back. And when they did, when they showed up again thinking they could bully me into compliance, I wanted to be ready. I wanted to look them in the eye and watch their certainty crumble. The night we finalized everything, Uncle Mark and I sat in the farmhouse living room, a bottle of cheap wine between us. He raised his glass and said, "To Eleanor. She'd be proud of you, Lydia." I clinked my glass against his, my throat tight. "To Grandma." And to never letting them win again. It wasn't just a toast, it was a promise. Because now, the house was untouchable. And so was I. It happened 2 weeks later, on a Saturday morning so bright and peaceful, it almost fooled me into thinking nothing could go wrong. I was in the kitchen, pouring myself a cup of coffee, when I saw them. My parents' SUV pulled into the driveway again, but this time, they weren't alone. A second car followed behind, a shiny black Lexus with a logo I recognized immediately, the Realtors. My chest tightened. They hadn't wasted any time. They really thought they could just walk back into my life and claim what wasn't theirs. I didn't panic. I'd been waiting for this. The front door swung open, and in they came. My mother, Margaret, leading the parade with a wide, triumphant smile. My father, Daniel, followed, carrying himself with that quiet arrogance he always wore when he thought things were under control. Chloe waltzed in next, practically glowing, and behind them, a sharply dressed realtor in a navy suit and polished shoes. Margaret spread her arms like she was unveiling a prize on a game show. "See? Isn't it lovely? Of course, it'll need some updates. Chloe has big plans. A pool out back, a bigger kitchen, maybe even knocking down a few walls. But the bones are here." The realtor nodded approvingly, scribbling notes on his clipboard. Chloe twirled in the middle of the living room like she already owned it. "Oh my God, I can totally see it," she gushed. "This is going to be amazing." My dream home. Finally, I leaned against the kitchen counter, cradling my coffee cup, watching the show. "What exactly are you doing?" I asked flatly. Margaret glanced at me, her smile not faltering. "We're just getting the ball rolling, sweetheart." "You'll thank us later. Chloe's happiness is everyone's happiness." "No," I said firmly. "What you're doing is trespassing. And wasting your time." Her smile thinned. "Lydia, don't make this harder than it needs to be. We already spoke to the realtor. Once you sign, the deal will move quickly. Chloe deserves this chance." Chloe tossed her hair. "Yeah, stop being so dramatic. You're single. You don't even need this house. Why ruin it for me?" I set my cup down carefully, my pulse pounding in my ears but my voice calm. "You're wrong about one thing. This isn't my house anymore." The room went silent. My parents froze. The realtor paused mid-scribble, glancing up. Chloe frowned, confused. "What do you mean, not your house?" Daniel asked, his voice low. "I sold it," I said. "It doesn't belong to me anymore." Chloe gasped. "What? You sold it? To who?" At that exact moment, the front door opened again. Heavy footsteps crossed the threshold, and in walked Uncle Mark. "Me," he said, his voice carrying through the room like a thunderclap. The looks on their faces, priceless. Margaret's jaw dropped, her hands trembling around her designer purse. Daniel's face drained of color as though he'd seen a ghost. Chloe just stood there, eyes wide, like a child who'd just been told Christmas was canceled. "You?" Margaret spat, her voice sharp with venom. "You're the buyer?" Mark crossed his arms, his expression calm but unyielding. "That's right." Lydia made me an offer, and I accepted. "Papers are signed. It's done." Chloe whirled toward me, her voice shrill. "You can't be serious. You sold it to him? Are you insane? This was supposed to be mine." I met her gaze, steady and cold. "It was never yours, Chloe. It was Grandma's, and she left it to me. And I wasn't about to let you or Mom or anyone else bully me into giving it up, so I made sure it stayed out of your reach, permanently." Margaret stepped forward, her face flushed with rage. "How dare you go behind our backs like this? Selling to Mark of all people? He's not family. He's a disgrace." Mark chuckled. "Funny, that's what you called me years ago when I refused to fund Chloe's tuition. Looks like not much has changed." Daniel finally spoke, his voice breaking. This is betrayal. Lydia, how could you do this to us? I felt something shift inside me then, years of pain, of being ignored, of being treated like the expendable child, and for the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt free. I did this because you left me no choice, I said. You made it clear I was never really your daughter, not the way Chloe is. So I stopped trying to please you. I chose myself. I chose Grandma's memory, and I'd do it again. The realtor, sensing the firestorm, awkwardly cleared his throat and slipped out the door. Chloe burst into tears, stomping her foot like a spoiled child. Margaret screamed about betrayal and family honor. Daniel muttered something about being finished with me. But none of it mattered anymore. I wasn't scared. I wasn't begging. I was done. And as Uncle Mark stood by my side, steady and protective, I realized something powerful. I didn't lose a family that day. I lost the illusion of one. And what I gained, my freedom, my dignity, was worth far more than their approval. Their reaction had been everything I hoped for, shocked, furious, and unforgettable. And it was the sweetest moment of my life. After that day, everything changed. The silence that followed their storming exit was so heavy, it felt like the walls of the farmhouse were absorbing it. For a few minutes, I just stood there, staring at the door they had slammed shut behind them. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from adrenaline. For the first time in my life, I hadn't backed down. Uncle Mark broke the silence. "You okay, kiddo?" I turned to him, and all at once, the years of pressure, rejection, and quiet pain seemed to lift. My throat tightened, and I let out a shaky laugh. "I'm more than okay. I think I'm free." In the days that followed, the calls started. First from my mother, fiery voicemails filled with accusations. "How dare you betray your family like this? You're ungrateful, heartless. You'll regret siding with him over us." Then from Chloe, sobbing into the phone, alternating between guilt trips and insults. "I hope you're happy, Lydia. You've ruined everything for me. You've always been jealous, and now you've finally taken it out on me." I didn't answer, not once. My father didn't call at all. He sent a single email, "You made your choice. Don't expect anything from us again." It hurt, of course it did. They were my parents, my family. But as the days stretched into weeks, I realized something I never thought I'd feel: relief. Their voices no longer dictated my life. Their disapproval no longer crushed me. I was finally living without the constant weight of trying and failing to be enough for them. Uncle Mark kept his promise. On paper, the house was his. In practice, it was still mine. We worked out a tenant agreement, but it was more symbolic than anything. He insisted on charging me a token rent just to keep everything official, but he also told me, "Consider this your home for as long as you want it. I don't care if it's 20 years, and it wasn't just about the house." Having him back in my life felt like a door reopening that I hadn't even realized I'd closed. We started having dinner together once a week. He'd tell me stories about my father when they were younger, stories I'd never heard because my parents erased him from the family narrative. Through him, I began piecing together a fuller picture of who I was, where I came from, and who had been unfairly shut out of my life. It was healing in ways I didn't expect. Meanwhile, my parents' silence stretched longer. Word spread among extended relatives, my aunts, cousins, people who had always believed Margaret's version of things. Some called me to scold, parroting her words. Family comes first. But others quietly reached out with messages of support. "I heard what happened. You did the right thing. I'm proud of you." For the first time, I wasn't isolated. I wasn't the black sheep. I was just someone who had finally drawn a line. And Chloe? She never got her dream home. Her boyfriend, frustrated with her constant complaints and obsession with the house that never came to be, eventually left her. I heard about it through a cousin. Apparently, she still blames me. I don't feel guilty. If anything, it confirmed what I already knew. She wasn't owed my inheritance, my sacrifice, or my future. One evening, sitting on the porch with a cup of tea, I thought about my grandmother. The sun was setting over the cornfields, casting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, and for a moment, I felt her with me. I remembered her words. You are stronger than they realize. She had been right. This house wasn't just shelter. It was proof that I didn't need my parents' validation to have worth. It was proof that I could stand on my own, make my own choices, and protect what mattered to me. The truth is, I didn't lose my family that day. I lost people who had never truly been my family in the first place. What I gained was something much greater: my freedom, my self-respect, and the chance to rebuild relationships with people who actually valued me, like Uncle Mark. And that's the lesson I carry forward, the one I want anyone listening to this story to take with them. Family isn't defined by blood or by guilt or by manipulation. Family is defined by respect, by love, and by the people who stand beside you instead of tearing you down. I may have lost my parents' approval forever, but I gained something I never thought I'd find: peace. And every time I walk through the farmhouse touching the walls my grandmother once touched, I know I made the right choice. Their outrage, their disappointment, their priceless reaction when they realized they had no power over me anymore. It was all worth it. Because for the first time, I wasn't just the forgotten daughter. I was my own person. And that, to me, is priceless. And that's my story. Looking back now, I don't regret a single decision. I may have lost parents who never truly valued me, but I gained freedom, peace, and a family bond that was real, not performative. My grandmother always believed I had strength inside me, and I finally proved her right. If you've ever been made to feel small by the people who were supposed to love you the most, I hope my story reminds you of this. You don't owe anyone your happiness, your inheritance, or your future. You deserve respect, and you deserve to stand tall in your own life. Their reaction that day was priceless, but my freedom, that was invaluable. If this story spoke to you, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Drop your thoughts in the comments below because I love reading your experiences. And of course, subscribe if you want more stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.